Hello and welcome to Oak Road Hatter, where I'm joined by Adam Driscoll this week, and it is just the two of us to dissect a very, very cold day against Swansea City and look ahead to the visit of Stoke City in midweek. Adam, how are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you, mate. Just not really thinking too much back to yesterday because it's obviously not one that's going to stick in anyone's minds for a long time. But I was pleased to get home and get in the warm, to be honest, more than anything. It was not a particularly pleasant day at the football, was it?
No, it was really horrible. I was absolutely freezing by the end of it, and I'm sure you weren't enjoying it much more sat down the front.
No, no, not at all. I mean, I like every time there's rain or wind, it just seems to blow into the Kenny end, and yeah, I sit right down on the front row, so really kind of in the elements. I think back to sort of like that Barnet game years ago, and just constantly blowing into the Kenny end. And I think on that particular day we escaped to about halfway up the stand to get dry. Um, but it's harder these days when you've got pretty much a sellout. You can't really go and nick an empty seat. You're forced to endure it, unfortunately.
It was it was quite a broken up start to the game yesterday, obviously because of the medical emergency in the stand before the games. Unfortunately, the club has announced that the person who fell ill at the ground was in a stable condition when taken to hospital. So our thoughts from the podcast, as of all Luton fans, goes to that supporter who had to go to hospital, and we hope they make a swift recovery. But we will talk about the game because it was, yeah, as we mentioned there, it was absolutely awful weather, and it's fair to say it was a bit windy, and that really impacted what we saw on the pitch. First of all, let's just talk about poor Thomas Kaminski trying to take goal kicks in that wind.
Yeah, yeah. It was. I mean, it was comical, wasn't it? Really, like, I mean, he was giving it everything, wasn't he? But I mean, I'd love to see sort of the side on, or anyone that watches this that watches the game side on to tell us how far he was able to progress it. Because from where I was sitting, I think he was comfortably inside our half. Um, so yeah, I'd love to know from anyone that can give us that perspective exactly where he was going with that. Yeah, it was just a difficult day. I mean, I don't think we really expected a game of like a huge amount of quality and a load of goals, but certainly when you kind of woke up on Saturday morning and you looked at the conditions, and yeah, it was never going to set itself up for a classic by any means.
No, we'll talk about that now because we've spoke about before that Swansea's excellent defensive record
Mm,
and not so inspiring attacking record. And in the game, you could see why they had such, little outlet in front of goal because they really struggled to create chances. But we weren't much better for large parts of the game. It was a tough watch, as we said, but um, obviously Edwards in the week said, or last week said, he would be there were a couple of players on their sort of last legs, as it was, last
mm.
chance, and we saw him rotate the team from the start. We saw Victor Moses coming on that left side. He dropped Mengi, dropped Chong. Obviously, it turned out that Mengi's actually undergone quite major surgery, so we'll talk about that a bit more later on. But it was good to see Edwards stick to what he said and make those changes.
Yeah, it was. I think I did allude to it in the week that we don't have a massive squad where you've got like 6, 7, 8 players outside of the match day 18 that you can just say right, they're coming into the fold. It was always going to be a case of the changes were going to be you know players out and players coming in that we have seen quite a lot of this season already. So obviously, we'll touch on Mengi, but that was enforced with Tom Holmes in for Mengi, which again, I think you asked the question midweek: does Holmes come in? And we sort of said yes, he can come in for anyone. And I thought he was decent again at the weekend, or yesterday, I should say. Um, and then yeah, the midfield side of things. Again, I think Brown. So Brown was benched. Chong was dropped. No real surprise there, given Edwards' comments, and like clearly Chong was one of the players they were aimed at. I think we could all see that. So yeah, no real surprise there. Kraus and Nakamba in as well into that midfield. I think the other one to drop out was Baptiste. So yeah, pleased to see him make the changes, but I think nothing that was really nothing that I sort of thought, "Oh, crikey, this guy, he means business," based on his words, because ultimately these are names that we've seen throughout the season so far anyway, really.
Yeah, Edwards was obviously forced into a couple of those changes with players not in the squad at all, in the form of Baptiste and obviously Mengi as well. Um,
Mm,
on the pitch, we weren't creating loads, it's fair to say. And once again, we had very little of the ball, which against Swansea, I'm sure many people expected, because that is what they are quite well known for. It's keeping the ball, playing it around the defence and the midfield. And I thought they controlled the ball very well. Um, and when you look at the stats, it looks like we were really struggling to get into the game.
yeah.
But for the opening, what, 20, 30 minutes, I thought we did fairly well.
Yeah, I don't think we were bad, actually, for the start of the game. I think we knew they were gonna have a lot of the ball because, I think but before the weekend, they were second only behind Leeds to average possession, and we're obviously nowhere near those sort of figures. I think it was like 60%. So we knew they were going to have the ball, but it was, can we impose ourselves on the game as well when we actually do have the opportunity to have the ball? What can we do with it? And I wouldn't say we had loads and loads of clear cut chances, but I thought we looked okay for that sort of first 10-20 minutes or so in terms of like knocking the ball about. I think we've probably got a little progressively worse in terms of like that side of things as the game went on. But we've certainly started games a lot worse this season against the likes of Hull and Cardiff as well. So I wasn't disappointed really in the first sort of like 20 minutes or so at all.
Yeah, and it was in that opening 20 minutes that we did start really well. We got the opening goal through Elo, who seems to have hit form the last few weeks, and it's very pleasing to see. It was a long ball downfield, I think held up quite well by the wind, which allowed for him to really push on that defender, beat the defender, and then he made Lawrence Vigouroux look pretty poor with his attempt to come out and claim the ball. Who did Eli nutmeg him or take the ball under him?
Yeah,
And the angle was a brilliant finish in the end, because he made the angle he had was really, really tough. And I was convinced from where we were sat that he was going to hit the post or something, but he
yeah,
finished brilliantly. And it was a really good start in terms of the scoreline, which is something we've not seen that much this season.
yeah. It was. It was. I mean, I have to admit, I was actually enjoying the delights of the urinals in the Kenilworth Road end when that happened, when the goal went in. So it's not like we're free scoring. So I've missed a moment that's a bit like gold dust these days. So it's a bit annoyed at that. I just came out and obviously saw that obviously heard the noise and the cheering, and then saw the replay on the telly. It's actually quite good because it gives you a very good perspective straight away. And yeah, I think Cabango, sells the keeper short with the back pass. And funnily enough, I don't actually think Elijah got a touch to take it round the keeper. I think the keeper sort of just came out, didn't really, it just sort of went under him or round him without him making any contact on the ball. And then obviously Eli has really good composure to put it in from what was a very, very tight angle. Yeah, much tighter angle than probably real time would have suggested. So yeah, fair play to him for that persistence, that kind of physicality, and also that composure in the finish. Um, Obviously, it's not really one that Swansea are going to want to watch back and look at too many times. And it's ironic that we we spoke about their defence and their structure. We spoke about Cabango and like the potential and the talent that he has. And they essentially gifted us a goal through a mixture of Cabango and Vigouroux. So yeah, I think we might have jinxed them on that front. So yeah, never mind. We'll take the goal whichever way they come at the moment.
Unfortunately, we weren't able to make the first half pressure count, and it was 1-0 at the break. But I thought Eli actually played pretty well for large parts of the game. Um, he looked really strong, he looked mobile, and he was causing problems, particularly in those wider channels, which we know he does really well. Moses as well impressed me yesterday. I thought he looked very effective down that left side, which is obviously not his natural side.
Yeah, I think he did a decent job. Um, I still look at him and kind of question how, like, are we playing him in the best position? I think, like I said, I think the intention when we signed him was to be, and I'm not even sure he was going to be Ogbene's replacement, because I think we knew Hashioka would come back. I think we really brought him in to play wide of a front three. Um, but it's obviously transpired that we're not really using that formation anymore. Certainly with the width up front, and he's kind of playing wing back on one place or the other. And yeah, I mean, I think he did a good enough job. And I think, I know we'll come on to defenders and injuries and things like that, but there's a pretty good chance that we're going to see a bit more of him over the next few weeks, probably in that left wing back position as well.
Yeah, it's not his natural position, but I thought he did fairly well. It's difficult to actually talk about the quality on the pitch because it wasn't great, as we've mentioned, and I don't think it was helped by the weather at all, as we've also discussed. And it was also just too cold to concentrate on anything at stages throughout the game. But we looked like, obviously, the goal we conceded in that second half. Frustratingly, they'd already tried that, shot that corner across the ground a couple of times before that, because the balls being whipped in was a bit problematic with the weather. The wind was catching the
Mm.
balls, and it was making corners quite difficult to for anyone to judge on either side. So they were playing that ball across the ground a couple of times, and very, very frustratingly, nobody picked up Matt Grimes as he came into, and it was a brilliant finish though.
Yeah, I mean, it was. Oh, you can't say anything about the finish other than the fact that it was sensational, really. And there's certainly no blame on Kaminsky from that perspective. You know, you do have to look at it and think they've already done it. They've already tried that routine. You know, they're not going to just leave it at once, are they? I think they're quite an experimental and sort of, they clearly have ideas about what they want to do. And yes, the conditions did help it in that sense. Um, but from our perspective, it's a goal again. You would put in the disappointed to concede category, certainly. When you look at it back, I wouldn't say he fizzed it into Grimes either from the corner. So there's kind of two opportunities. There's one opportunity to actually get towards the ball or where it's going, before it gets anywhere near Grimes, to just to put an orange shirt in someone's eye line. And then obviously ultimately when he takes the shot, when you look at it on a kind of freeze frame, I think we've got a lot of statues in the box. We've got a lot of bodies back, probably everybody, at a guess, but no one anywhere near Grimes, and no one that's kind of making a lunge or a dive or any sort of real attempt to see what's about to happen. And I don't think that is harsh. I think there are too many bodies that are kind of frozen just around the 6 yard box, or slightly further out. And yeah, I'd have wanted to have seen someone throw their body in the way, and just give something else for Grimes to think about in terms of if it's curling around somebody instead. But that didn't happen. He comfortably puts it in the back of the net, and I think from there on it was a bit backs to the wall, and can we get out of here with a point, which again is a little bit disappointing, really.
You say it's disappointing, but it's what we've seen for
Mm.
most of the season. We concede one, and we look like we're going to be conceding straight away again. But fortunately, mainly thanks to some excellent saves from Kaminsky, it stayed at 1-1. I didn't realise until I've just checked, and Swansea actually had 10 shots on target. And I can't recall with them having 10 shots on target, but clearly Kaminsky was a lot busier than we actually thought he was. Despite winning man of the match at the ground, he was clearly busier than we thought he was, because, yeah, 10 shots on target and only you can see scoring one. You can see why Swansea fans were singing "If we score, we're on the pitch" with their
Yeah,
goal
yeah.
record.
And when he got man of the match, I was sitting there going, "What, have I missed something here?" Like I couldn't really kind of think what he's done. But I think obviously a few of those shots on target did come when they were peppering us at the end. But yeah, you look at the statistics. We had 8 shots to their 20. during the game, 2 versus 10 in terms of on target, 9 saves by Kaminsky compared to 1 for Vigouroux. Um, yeah, and it's just what I think. The only other shot on target, if I'm right, is when Hashi pulled it back to Adebayo down that right hand side, and Vigouroux made a really good kind of fingertip save round the right hand post. So, or sorry, the left hand post. So, yeah, I mean, and that was, I think that was around the hour mark, certainly before their goal. So when you look at it and you think we've not had another shot on target after that, and probably at least half an hour of the game, that is, it's majorly disappointing. And like, with the greatest of respect to Swansea, as well as they played, we're not. It's not like we're playing Leeds, where you could probably maybe appreciate that. But I think for a team at home, yes, we're not fluid, but you know they're 13th, we're at home. The game's on the line in terms of 1-1. Um, to not test the keeper or have any meaningful attack really for the last half an hour is yeah, is pretty disappointing really.
And we really looked void of ideas after we conceded. We were
Mm.
getting stuck in our own half so many times and just trying to pump it long and finding no one with these long, hopeful balls. And it was just coming back into the box again and again and again. And it is the story of our season, unfortunately. We don't seem to have an out ball.
No, we don't really, do we? And like, we've not got that kind of connection between Morris and Eli. Um, they're just playing as two. Well, everybody is, but they're playing as two individual players at the moment, I think. Um, I don't really know. I don't really know how you address it. I guess the only way you can address it is, as we said in the week, is to have this ball carrying midfielder where you don't need to just lump it long. Because let's be honest, like Saturday, we were lumping it long and one bounce and it was in the stand because of that wind. So do you know what I mean? It was like we were never going to get onto them anyway. We were never going to get onto one of those types of balls without it running out. So I think we have massively missed, and then this was a prime example again of missing that ball carrying midfielder, someone to really kind of, yes, we're under pressure, but to take it from the edge of our box, drive us up the pitch, and try and put a bit of pressure on them. Um, and a lot's been said in the last week about Chong. I personally probably would have brought him on purely for that role of, like, we know he can do it. I know he does hold on to the ball too long sometimes, and he can lose the ball, but I think we needed that drive from the middle of the pitch somewhere, and I think probably Chong was the one that I would have done, to try and change that. But yeah, it didn't happen, and yeah, it was very much kind of back to the wall, wasn't it? Really.
Yeah, and I mean, myself and my mates discussed who we would, or the changes or lack of changes on the walk back after the game. And we said as well that we thought Chong should have come on because it would have given us an option to get out from our defending our own half, and it would have let us push forwards a bit because we saw Swansea make 4 changes, and you looked at our bench, and it was actually quite a weak bench compared to what we've had at times this season. We did
Mm.
have quite a few attackers on the bench, but we didn't. We only saw Jacob Brown and Mads Anderson come on, with Anderson obviously being an enforced change. And
Yeah.
by the looks of it, Eli was a enforced as well because they were originally going to take Morris off by the looks of it, but Eli was limping around for probably 5 or 10 minutes before that. And
Yeah.
what it made me think when he was limping around was it really shows our lack of game management again, because at any point he could have just gone down and called the ref. The ref would have stopped the play because it's not like the ball was in play and it was a quick moving game. He could have gone down and had been treated and been able to kill off that momentum, but it took until 70 minutes for him to actually go off.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think, yeah, 70 minutes, and then Brown came on. Don't think we've quite got the partnership in Brown and Morris that maybe everyone thought it might be. Um, I just think they're really. I think Brown is more of a pressing forward, but I do think they're quite similar in terms of, like, the runs they make. We've seen them going for the same balls before. And I really like Jacob Brown. I actually thought it was a bit harsh to not have him in the team, because when you think back to Norwich, he took his chance pretty well. I don't really think he's never really one you can look at and go, he lacks effort. and I think you probably can do that for a few if we're being honest. So I was a little bit surprised to see him on the bench. I thought we could have been a bit bolder, a bit more aggressive with the sort of lineup that we put out as a podcast in terms of what we thought they might go with. I think we had sort of Eli, Morris, and Brown as a three. I would have quite liked to have seen that. And Brown playing, but obviously that wasn't to be, and he only got 20 minutes, and it was just a 20 minutes where his primary role was defending, wasn't it? So it was almost a bit of a wasted sub, really, when you think that you've got like Pelly, um, and even like even probably more defensive minded players that you could have done if you knew that the last 20 minutes were going to be soaking up that pressure. So yeah, yeah, I do feel a bit for Brown in that sense.
Yeah, he's someone that you cannot criticise for his effort. In fact, I think he probably is the hardest worker whenever he's on the pitch, aside from maybe Tom Krause, who was
Mm.
running around all over the place again and was putting tackles in constantly. I'm baffled that he didn't get a yellow card at one point. He made 4 fouls in a row, I think, and still didn't
Yeah,
get a yellow card, and I was very surprised. But he did his normal job, and I thought Clark was. He looked. He looked like he's improved recent weeks, and I thought yesterday he was quite good, particularly around the edge of the box.
yeah, yeah. I do think Clark was better. With Kraus though, do you think I guess our season is either heading for a relegation battle or it's heading to like mid-table obscurity. Do you think with Kraus, he's almost showing himself to be too good for us, and therefore that supposed chance we had in the summer of signing him, like I can just see someone that goes up from this league to the Prem, or someone that doesn't quite make it, like if Sheffield United didn't quite make it or whatever. I think he's doing a lot of good stuff to put himself in the window. Um, do you think that's something that, like, realistically, we'd have a big battle on our hands in the summer?
I mean, it's certainly a risk. I'm sure. I think there's probably other midfielders that would be more tempting to put to other teams just because of maybe they've seen a bit more because he's not obviously not been able to show his best in the team we've got because we're just not playing well.
Mm,
But he's certainly a player that if you get him into a team that has more of the ball first and foremost and does a bit more with it, he would really thrive because he gets up and down the pitch really well. He probably covers more ground than any other player on that pitch at times.
yeah.
Um, so he is one that I'm sure would be very appealing to other teams, and hopefully we can get him permanently because I would really like to see him stay long term, and not just because he gives it some every time he sees the fans. I'm sure he's turning to the fans every 20 minutes or so, giving it
Yeah.
that. But you want a player like that, really. You want someone who's really gives a shit when they're on the pitch, and I think he is that player. I think the other positive we have, he's clearly settled in really well because by the looks of it, he's very, very friendly with the squad. He obviously went to watch Mark McGuinness on his full debut for Ireland against England. So there must be quite a good relationship building within the squad, and I think that gives us a good chance of keeping him as well. Um, we are going to talk about that defence because we saw a back three lineup of Holmes, McGuinness, and Bell, and generally I thought they did fairly well, particularly in the first half. I thought they were very good. McGuinness was the standout of the three for me, which is good to see because he has struggled of recently.
Yeah. I think it's ironic that his defensive action led to the corner that they scored from, but I think for the most part of games, he's a good defender. I think the challenge with McGuinness comes when he has to think too much, and I don't mean that like to be disrespectful to him, but I think if you lump a ball forward, chances are he'll win it, and he will, get. I mean, I know he didn't in the QPR game earlier in the season, and that was obviously early on in his career with us, but he generally wins his headers and wins the physical battle. When there are players playing around him, and he has to think, like last weekend, do I stick? Do I stick a foot in? Like, do I go for it? I think he struggles there, but if we are a team that are wanting to go back to basics and just do the basics of defending, um, and be that physical unit, then I do think he really thrives there. And I think you could probably apply the same rules to Tom Holmes as well. Um, I think with McGuinness, I think he's a bit Marmite in the fan base from what I'm hearing. Generally about I think really the ones that aren't keen are purely looking at the money that we've paid and will pay, and then they're looking at the return we're getting right now. and that's fair to do that, to be fair. But he hasn't put that price tag on himself. The club have decided to pay what they wanted to pay, and will end up paying. So you really just have to judge him based on the performances he's putting in. Um, and I think he's done fine. I think he's done fine. He's been no worse than anyone else in the defence, and yeah, I think he will be fine in the future as well.
And talking about that defence, obviously we had Bell back, and he's been back a couple of weeks now. Obviously, was out for some time, and by the looks of it, it didn't look great. It looked like it was potentially another hamstring injury, which is so frustrating because we're already without Alfie on that left side. So now to be with potentially without Amari Bell and obviously Mengi, who we'll talk about, we're really back to that stage where we're running out of defenders again because we finished the game with a back three of Tom Holmes, Mark McGuinness, and Mads Anderson, which isn't exactly a small back three, but it's certainly not a mobile back three. And I don't know if I want to see that as a back three we're playing going forward.
No, when I think about the pace of the championship and the pace and the way players and other teams knock the ball about, it does frighten the life out of me, to be honest. Yeah, not for the physicality side, but if someone's turned you and they're 5 yards the other side, then who are you going to be physical with because they've gone. So I do feel slightly cautious in that sense. Um, and again, like with Bell, you can put him in the same bracket as Burke and Baptiste. Like we're getting these players back fit, and then they're just disappearing again with another injury. Whether it's the same injury or whether it's a new one, it's just time and time again. We wait weeks to get these players back, and then they're gone again, and we don't see them again for weeks. And yeah, I know we're going to come on to the injury side in a little bit with like Mengi as well, but I just how we can't keep players fit is insane. Like at some point when you put it down to bad luck, you can only do that for so long. Um, and I think that was a long time ago that we could attribute all of our injuries to bad luck, and now I'd really hope the club are looking at this going, what are we doing wrong? Like, have we got the wrong training methods? Have we got the wrong medical staff? Do we have the right facilities? You'd think for a club and they've just come down from the Premier League, you would have all of those three things sussed, and you'd be able to keep the bulk of your squad fit for the majority of the season. But we just don't seem to be able to do it, and with that we have no consistency or partnerships developing across the midfield or the defence really.
Yeah, and another player we're going to be without for what looks like a really significant amount of time is Ted and Mengi, who we have briefly touched on. But he posted on his Instagram last night to say that he's undergone surgery on a knee injury that he suffered against Fulham in the last game of the season. If you remember, he went off quite early in that game in the first half.
Yeah.
Um, and apparently he was advised that he should have surgery over the summer, but he didn't.
No, I have a lot of questions on this subject.
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah, so Mengi's confirmed that this happened in May, early May, probably was it? And that he could have had surgery in the summer, and between him and the club, they've decided not to. I mean, firstly, who's making that decision? It, uh, you can't. It can't be the player because he's under contract at your club. So it's your responsibility medically to make the decision that best fits him. And for me, that is you have surgery in the summer. Like whether he's aggravated something in the last week, and that's what Edwards is alluding to in terms of a freak injury or something, then I'm not sure. But it sounds very much like Mengi's confirmed it himself that there's been this need for surgery for months, and it's not happened. So firstly, I think the club have just made a huge mistake there in not taking the ownership and saying, like, I don't care if you want to move in the summer or not. You are having this surgery because you're under contract with us, and while you're under contract with us, you need to be fit. So why the hell we're doing it in December? Because we probably won't see him now before February, and that is maybe early as well. Um, so I just really don't understand that. Um, and then I guess off the back of that, what's Edwards talking about with freak injuries? because the only two players that weren't in the squad yesterday from the Norwich game was Mengi and Baptiste. So who's picked up a freak injury or freak injuries? It can't be Mengi because Mengi's contradicted what Edwards is saying, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm a little bit confused here around what's supposedly gone on in the last week, and I'm also baffled again at the medical side and the medical team. And yeah, not to go on too much of a rant, but Jamie tweeted something yesterday, I think it was, about our medical department and our inability for them to do their job. Like we've spoken about players constantly injured. When they come back, they break down. The Mengi surgery that's supposedly been delayed until now. Throwing Doughty back on the other week when he was on one leg, and now we haven't got him for a few more weeks, having already been out for 3 or 4 weeks. I just the decisions being made on this medical side are absolutely insane, and I'd love to know more about like what is the thinking going on at the moment. Because it's just another department within the club, but you're sitting there as a fan going, like, what are we doing? Like, we're not making sane decisions. And yeah, I mean, it's a good job Jamie's not on here tonight because otherwise, I think that rant of I've just had would have been doubled. So yeah, keep your eyes on X and Blue Sky because I'm sure he'll have some more to say after this as well.
Yeah, we've already discussed the medical side of things on quite a number of occasions, and obviously none of us are experts in that department, but the people who are supposedly experts seem to be
Yeah.
making some interesting decisions. Um, yeah, I don't really know what's going on, and it just seems like it's a bit of a mess, particularly when it comes to our defenders as well, which is really frustrating because it was last season as well. We saw so many defenders unavailable through injury, and then they come back and they're out again. They come back and they're out again, and we thought we were over that, and it seems to be just the same thing. So I don't know. There seems to be a bit of an issue there, and I don't know if there's problems behind the scenes in that medical department. But I think someone's got to ask the question because, back on Mengi because he should have had that surgery over the summer. Realistically, it makes no sense to not have it in the summer when he's got that break because he wasn't going to be playing at an international tournament or anything.
Mm.
He would have had the break anyway because all the players got a break. So why didn't he get that surgery? Was that him making that decision? Was that the club making that decision? Was it
I
him
mean,
thinking, I might get a move this summer, so I don't want to get surgery because I won't get a move?
yeah, maybe, but then you still see clubs still sign players off the back of a medical, like a failed medical, or they know the situation and they don't do a medical in that sense, or they cover what they need to. Like it's not a case in football anymore where an injured player can't be signed, or they just fail a medical and it doesn't go through. That's just not how it works in 2024. I mean, I don't really want to hazard a guess, but if I'm Mengi, I'm thinking, right, I really want this move. Like, do I need to keep myself fit? And you can look at that both ways, can't you? You can look at it. Well, I need to show that I'm capable of passing a medical, but anyone that's doing a medical on him for a potential transfer will have seen through scans quite easily that there's a surgery needed. It's not like something that only Luton can see. It's not showing up on a Luton and Dunstable MRI and no other hospital. So it's very strange. And yeah, I think between the club and Mengi, I'm absolutely amazed that we've let it drag on to December, and now we won't. I'm sure we won't see him um, until February at the very earliest.
I mean, just for the sake of player welfare as well, for him to have been, well, he said last for large parts of last season he was playing with an injury, and he was never really fully fit for large parts of the season. But he was really good last season playing with that injury somehow. But this season, you'd think maybe earlier in the season, when we did have all our defenders back earlier this season, someone would sit down with him and go, maybe this is the time for you to get this surgery. Not now.
Mm.
Why
No,
hasn't it happened earlier?
do you think that if maybe the club made that decision, thinking, well, we know we've already got Anderson injured long term or coming back, Burke's injured. I think was Bell injured as well. Like, do you think they avoided doing this because we already had defenders that were out injured, waiting to come back? And if we did it, not only would it show more incompetence, but it would also mean we have to go and buy another one. So it could be twofold there. It could be we're going to show ourselves up again on a medical basis, and we're going to have to go and get another centre half. So I don't know. I don't know how we've come to this scenario where we've been sitting on him being injured since May, and now he's having surgery. And it's not like we're sitting in the top two with an abundance of good centre halves, and it won't impact the team too much. It's regardless of how we've been shaping up, losing Mengi out of any defence in this league is a massive loss.
Yeah, it certainly is. And also, you say there about we would have had to go and get another defender in the transfer window. I think we should have done that anyway, because if we knew there were players that were having it, everyone knew we had defenders who were having injury problems. People know what Burke's like with his injuries and his legs that sometimes don't want to work. You saw how long Mads was out injured last season, and then obviously he's been out again this season. Mengi,
Yeah,
obviously, they would have been aware of this issue, so they knew he would have had to have surgery at some point. So you
yeah,
got, and we obviously we sold Osho. Lockyer's unable to play because of his situation. So you have to look at it and go, why didn't they sign another defender as well as Mark McGuinness? We did have the money to play with, we just didn't use it, and it's
yeah,
another frustrating thing from the summer, I guess.
yeah,
We're going to go to a quick break now. But before that, don't forget to check out oakroadhatter.com for our merch. We've got plenty of different designs and plenty of different products, whether that's t-shirts, jumpers, hoodies, or even mugs and prints. And they look great. Everything looks great on the merch website. There's been a lot of time and effort gone into that. So if you're looking for a Christmas gift for a Luton fan, or you want to pick something up for yourself, check out oakroadhatter.com and check out our merch. But we're going to go to a break and we'll come back to discuss Stoke City. Welcome back to Oak Road Hatter, where I'm still joined by Adam Driscoll, and we're discussing Luton's midweek visit from Stoke City. And it's probably going to be another cold one, I'm afraid, Adam. It's a Tuesday night under the lights, so hopefully the fans will be up for it. We know what our relationship with Stoke has been like of recently, thanks mainly to Nathan Jones. But
yeah.
yeah, it's a Stoke side that's pretty comfortably in mid-table, and I don't think they've been inspiring many of their fans as of recently, with no win in the last 5 games, including a 2-1 defeat to Sunderland and a 2-0 defeat to Burnley most recently, which is fair enough because they're both very good teams. But it's a Stoke side that has the ability and has some very good players, and we will still need to be better than what we've seen at stages this season.
Yeah, absolutely. The Nathan Jones derby, as I think we now like to call it. I'm pretty sure they're still blaming Nathan Jones for another season of probably what will be mid-table. Appreciate Stoke fans that may be above where we finish up, but you've got to let go of that. It's not Nathan Jones's fault that every manager comes to your club and fails. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, they always talk about a cold Tuesday night in Stoke, and it's going to be a cold Tuesday night in Luton versus Stoke. So I do hope that we can, at some point this season, start to show a bit of fight and be competitive against some of these teams. Because it's another game, and it's another game where you look at it and go, we need to be winning it. And that, I don't mean that with any disrespect, but I'm saying it in the sense of whatever you're trying to achieve. Like Stoke they're not a renowned finisher in the playoffs. Like you really you look at it and go, well, if we want to stay up, if we don't want to be in a relegation battle, we need to be winning this game. If you were looking at it, if you were like sixth or eighth, wherever who is there at the moment, they'd be looking at it and going, Stoke at home, we need to win this game. So yeah, I mean, it just falls into the same category in my mind. It's a must-win game. We spoke about needing 4 points from Swansea and Stoke, and yeah, obviously the only way we get to that is with a win on Tuesday night. So just yeah, big game, and really we just really need to get 3 points just to give us a little bit of a shift towards mid-table versus looking over our shoulders as we are at the moment.
Yeah, and they've got some very talented players in their squad. They've got quite a big squad, I've seen. Um, One of the bigger in the division by the looks of it, but they've got some very talented attackers in particular. And the one I want to talk about is the obvious one. It's Tom Cannon, who we were linked with over the summer, but as were a number of other sides. But we seem to have quite solid links with him at one stage. But he did end up going to Stoke, and he scored 7 goals for them in the league already.
Yeah, I'm glad you told me that because I was very quickly typing to find out how many goals he'd scored. I like him. When we were linked with him, when that name came up, sort of a few days before deadline day, I was sort of like, okay, I like this. This is good. This is a different type of striker to what we have, and obviously someone that's already proven as well. He scored goals at Preston, limited time at Leicester, but did okay from the Leicester fans that I know that I've spoken to. So I was quite excited when we were linked with him. Then obviously you find that in the days and the hours after that, there's more and more clubs that are in the mix. Um, more and more clubs were being linked with him, and you started to think we're not winning this battle against some of those teams based on what we'd already done in the window spend wise. So it was disappointing that kind of evaporated, really, didn't it? And it also was disappointing, I guess, personally for Joe Taylor because he was the one that was directly impacted by our failure to get Cannon or another forward, and he's as a result of that been sitting on our bench for most weeks. But there's no doubt that Cannon will be a massive threat on Tuesday night. And yeah, we just spoke about our um, our back line potentially being Holmes, McGuinness, and Anderson. Um, I just hope we've got a very, very low defensive line because, yeah, there can't be too much room between those three and Kaminsky if we're playing someone like him on Tuesday night.
Yeah, and he won't be short of balls into him as well with the players behind him, where they've got someone like Beijing Ho on the left side or Lewis Kumas, who the Liverpool loanee, who I'm sure his name being mentioned makes some people feel quite old because he's the son of is the son of Neil Kumas.
Is it Neil
Um,
Kumas?
I think so.
I can't remember. Someone watching will tell us.
Yeah,
And
he's
Kumas, he was interesting, wasn't it? Because I think
Jason
he was
Kumas.
Jason Kumas. That's who I was
Neil
thinking.
Dans and Jason Kumas because they're um, what's this? The two sons both came into that Liverpool side at the same time last season.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, absolutely. But I think
yeah,
Edwards alluded to it, didn't he? Like after that Anfield game, he was sort of saying, "I played against your dad." I think to Jaden Dans and Kumas as well. And again, like I know we've spoken about the market and the Premier League loans, and that we didn't do things like that. I'm a little bit surprised that someone like him wasn't maybe more associated to being linked with us, given those connections that Edwards has and how kind of how highly regarded Edwards was last season by some of those kind of elite Premier League clubs as well. So yeah, it'll be another interesting one to watch on Tuesday night. Um, but then even looking at players that haven't played recently for them, they've got some kind of familiar names somewhat in like Lyndon Gooch as well. I think it's always been quite a pretty good player for this level. And then the one that I think may have been injured because I imagine he would have been playing is it Wouter Berger in centre mid or holding mid. And I think he's someone as well that can really like get on the ball and control a game, and probably someone that won't be with them for like the long term as well in that sense. So it will be a challenge, and I certainly hope we are up for it.
yeah, it will certainly be a challenge. And if they're back to their best, Stoke, we've seen them be quite dangerous in front of goal this season. I mean, we saw them score 6 against Portsmouth, and I can't say we've been much better than Portsmouth this season. Although Portsmouth did win on the weekend, so um, it's a difficult one to predict, and also difficult to predict what Luton team will see, particularly given those defensive injuries we mentioned. Um, hopefully players returning from injury. I'm not sure if anyone will be back.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not sure. I mean, we don't know the extent of Bell's injury, but the fact he sort of hobbled off on a Saturday with maybe the same injury he's had before, I don't think bodes very well when you look forward to Tuesday. Adebayo looked a bit more of just a little knock, so I'd be surprised if like he wasn't going to be back in the team. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think, but if Bell's not fit, we start to have real problems in defence. Um, and it probably would be the three that we've mentioned. Um, Alternatively, you change shape, but I'm not really sure if I can see Edwards going to a back four or not.
I mean, personally, I think we should be going to a pack four with the lack of availability we've got. But then it raises the question: who plays at left back? And if we are going to play a left back, it would probably be Joe Johnson, who was on the bench on Saturday. We've not seen him in a little while, actually. Him and Zach Nelson were both on the bench, and I was actually disappointed that Nelson wasn't brought on sort of later on in the game because I thought he could have maybe helped us get out a bit more. He's very tidy on the ball as well. I don't think they're likely to start, but if one of them was to, I think it would certainly be Joe Johnson with the players that are currently unavailable in defence.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. We alluded to it last week around like bringing the likes of Nelson and Johnson back into the squad because at some point you have to, considering the form that we're in. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think he will. I think he'll play it safe in the sense of playing Anderson for Bell if that is a change that has to be made. I think that's probably what will happen because then you've got. I mean, you might question certain players' abilities, but you would certainly have an experienced enough back line to start the game. Whereas if you kind of throw Joe Johnson in from the start, bearing in mind he's barely made the squad for months, I think it's not really fair in my mind to be able to do that. Um, but I think you're right in terms of if he does go to a back four, can you play Moses left back? Not sure you can really. So you could potentially have to play Johnson at left back. That's why I think he'll probably stick with the three centre halves and two wing backs and go with that kind of more experienced back line.
And we'll hopefully have someone like Baptiste back in the middle because I thought we did miss him on Saturday in terms of getting the ball out of defence and moving it forwards. I think he probably would have made a slight difference to that, and it would have meant we could stop going long in that wind. Hopefully, it's not as windy on Tuesday because I'm not sure I can sit through that again. Um, I'm gonna go for some score predictions now, Adam. So I'll start with you, and there are only two of us. So if you go first,
Okay. Oh, do you know what? I went for 0-0 against Swansea, and it really felt like one. To be fair, so I might try and claim the points in our league for that because it was very uninspiring. I I'm going to go for a 1-1 in this one. Um, I don't know why. I think it's going to be one of those. It's a Tuesday night. It will be cold. I don't suddenly think we're going to wave a magic wand and see loads of chances and talent and quality. But equally, there could be a situation there where we are having a bit of a slow defensive line. So I'm not really sure I can see us keeping a clean sheet as well. So I'm going to very firmly sit on the fence, and I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. Um, what are you thinking, mate?
I think I think we're going to win, but it's not. I think it'll be probably 2-1. We're definitely going to concede because with that defence lining up, if they play one ball in behind, it'll be like buses turning. Um, so I think it'll be 2-1 to Luton, and it raises the question: is it must win for Edwards this one? Because obviously it's these home games, by the looks of it, that is keeping him just about in that job after some of the pretty horrendous defeats we've had away from home, and without having not beaten Swansea, now playing Stoke, I think it's probably a must-win game. I don't know what you think.
I think in the eyes of the majority of fans, yes, it is a must-win. But I think I think in the eyes of the board, it's not. Um, the way things are shaping up right now, it looks like they are backing him, and we're going to certainly get to. I mean, unless something really random happens, because they've shown no inkling of change. I think it looks like they're backing him until the January window opens, and then we obviously see how much they're willing to back him during that. Um, I'd be very very surprised if they did anything between now and somewhere in January because they, like I say, they've shown no inkling at all. Normally, if there's like an ultimatum or you think like they've given him one game or this game or whatever, it normally gets leaked somehow. and so most people would know he's got this game to save his job. But I don't think that's been the case at all, certainly from the board's perspective. So yeah, I think it's a must win for us in terms of a fan ambition and an ideal. But for the board, I think it's just another game where we just hope we can get the 3 points. Really, I don't know if you have any differing opinion on that.
I mean, I agree with that one. I think for fans, they're really getting to that point where they're like, something needs to change now, and I think we know what that thing is that fans want to see change, because at the moment nothing's clicking and we seem void of ideas a lot of the time. And it is really frustrating, but I'm not sure if I can see them second, even if we do lose, unless it is a really horrendous, sort of embarrassing defeat, then maybe their hand will be forced a bit. But yeah, for me,
Yeah,
it's a difficult one to predict that one. But I'm sticking by it. I think we'll win on Tuesday, but I don't think it'll be a game for the football purists, which we haven't seen many anyway this season, so it's something we're getting used to. We'd love to know your score predictions and also your thoughts on everything we've discussed today, whether that's the medical team and Mengi, it's the defensive availability and our hopefully not a very high line, or just some score predictions. So let us know in the comments if you're watching on YouTube, or get in touch with us on social medias at Oak Road Hatter on Twitter or X, Instagram, Blue Sky and Facebook. But from myself and from Adam, thank you very much for listening.